So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak with you. I was telling Drew that I don't really give talks or speeches. I have conversations. And that's the kind of dialogue I like to exchange. And I appreciate the invitation to come and speak to you about, I think, is a very important and critical issue. And I like to believe that in my 20 years in academia, playing somewhat a significant role in promoting women of color, or people of color, minorities in general, underrepresented group in the STEM fields, advancing their careers. And in different types of settings, whether that's a setting from the institution where I serve, but I've also, as was mentioned, I've worked at the University of Michigan. After applying multiple times, I finally received a Harvard fellowship, so I'm a Harvard fellow. They finally were smart enough to agree to let me come there, and truly outstanding experience. So I want to talk with you and share with you some things about the kinds of things that I personally have been involved in, and for a NSF Catalyst IT grant that we had a few years ago. And, but I do want to put that in a context, because when we received that, when I applied for it, I got it, we had one president, and then when I implemented, it was during the tenure of another president. And so the responses from the faculty during that time may, I think personally, maybe a little skewed, but nevertheless, it did say, from an institutional perspective, you know, some things that we needed to address and take care of. Let me also preface this by, and this is just me talking, I do think this issue is a diversity and inclusion issue. Many institutions around the country, whether it's Yale, University of Missouri, have made or are making some initiative to address D&I initiative at the undergraduate level in terms of creating a climate for all students. I would argue that the same D&I issue should exist for faculty and staff as well. And I'm going to say this because I wrote a letter to the editor for the Tennessean, and the point I made there, and I'm willing to say this on camera, is that I thought, or I believe that, and there may be some alums in the audience, but I do believe UT should not be silent on that issue, irrespective of what legislators believe. I get that part, but for an academic institution where diversity and inclusion is important in terms of the students and the faculty, I challenge that institution to be ahead of that issue, okay? And I have a lot of connection with there because my nephew graduated from that institution last year. And the things that he shared with me in that experience, you know, state's flagship university, but the university, I believe, should take a stand on that issue, irrespective of what our legislators say. But I think they've been relatively silent on that. But the question that comes to mind, again, still is, you know, from that philosophical perspective, how do we provide an opportunity for all faculty to achieve their specific goals? Now, I should know better.
There's a power switch on the side.
On the side?
Sorry.
Yeah, that says on. Great, great. So I'm just going to go through some slides. Again, this is just a chat. A couple things I want to talk about. And I really enjoyed the dialogue on that panel. And you are talking about the right two topics, mentoring and TNP, okay? I would go deeper on the tenure promotion about policies, okay? But either one of those, the common denominator there is a true advocate individual who's going to make those things happen. I don't care what the situation is, okay? It's a good provost, a good president, a good dean, a good chair, or someone who's going to make that happen. So some of you may have known of TSU, but things I like to cover, TSU's State of Women in Faculty, NSF Advance, my Catalyst grant. We do have a pending big proposal with NSF right now, and I'll just highlight just a couple of things with that, and then finishing with some conclusions. So the other TSU without the M in the great city of Nashville. And for those of you who don't know, and can everybody see that? Okay. I think we were founded the same year as another great institution, right? Actually, I think 3 schools. I think Memphis, MTSU, and TSU were found around the same time. And we're about 9,000 students, about 7,000 undergrad, 2,000 graduate students, and about 400 full-time faculty. And within the last 3 years, we have aggressively, just like MTSU is doing in terms of research, we've gone from about $35 million in research, now standing at about 53, probably going to be about 56 by the end of this year, by aggressively pursuing research opportunities, grants as well as contracts. Now, some challenges comes with that, right? Especially as a dean trying to manage faculty workloads. But for a school our size, we've really been pretty effective at that. And our president at the top right, serving 3 years, who's a STEM advocate, graduated bachelor's degree in mathematics, but also a PhD from Georgetown, and also a PhD in accounting and a CPA. So outstanding credentials, I think. So very quickly, let me, and many of you may know this in these items, but sometimes I have to reflect, okay? So, and this is from the American Science of Women in Science, the data that I have, and more importantly, when you look at this, and if you can see that, look at the different ranks of men and women, Black and Hispanic. And it's clear when you look at that, when you get down from the highest rank, full professor. Yes, good. And down to associate and assistant professors, how this shade region gets larger and larger, and these numbers here. And in all honesty, we've seen just a little incremental improvement over the years, but a lot more to do. Here's even a better description here, looking at underrepresented minority women, Asian women as well. You see these numbers at the different levels as well. For women of color, that percentage hovers less than 6%. And the real challenge is that how do women reach that peak of full professor? And I have some stories I can tell you, even though I guess they're on camera. But I have a Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. And in 15 years, no, probably 20 years, there's never been a female faculty in that department, okay? And so when I got here 6 years ago, I'm asking the question, why? And then I, do a little digging and find out that there have been 7 women go through that department. But none of them stayed. In fact, 2 of them are in the computer science department now. And so I asked the question, no, I put my CSI hat on and I did some investigation. And it's the very issues of why we are here. The very issues why we're here. And I'm slowly trying to change that, but I have some challenges, Mr. Provost. And it's that tenure thing, right? Okay? I can't figure out a way around that. I don't know, maybe Dr. Knox can help me. But I haven't not figured out a way to get rid of, I'm on camera, right? I haven't found a way to change attitudes and behaviors of faculty that's been there 25 years plus. I just haven't done it. I'm telling you, I haven't done it. And now that's not to say that I haven't approached them in a very diplomatic and professional way. But to this day, there's not a female faculty member in that department. Now I've been able to recruit several in the other units, but we may have talked about that offline. Okay. So I like showing this because it reflects about who's receiving funding, okay? What faculty are receiving funding? And so you look here in terms of percent at 4-year institutions. And, you know, Asian men are doing pretty well, relatively well. But white women, 40%, underrepresented women. The ideal, and this is just me talking, ideally all of these should be around the 40% plus area, okay, in terms of the ability to obtain certain types of funds. And I've been fortunate enough to raise about $11 million during my time as a faculty member, but not by myself. You know, grants today, certainly in the last 10 years, is all about collaboration. And then also, this is women as a percentage of full professors, which you see here since 1993, and we have seen some improvement. The Research One institutions have made an impact, and in my bio, you mentioned I'm University of Iowa and postgrad in Michigan. I'm a Big Ten fanatic. Okay, go the other Big Blue, Michigan. But I made a statement that the Big Ten, now with some other schools, they produce almost 25% of all PhDs. Almost 25%. That's pretty significant. Okay, so what Michigan does, and the University of Illinois does, and what Ohio State does, make an impact that ripples across really higher education. And so there are some programs that they have there that they, I think, are pretty significant. So many of you know this already about Advance, and I've known all the program directors of Advance, because when I make my trips to NSF, I make it a point to meet those individuals. And so you know the goals and the programs at the bottom here. Now this last one, this plan, that's what TSU has been involved in the last 3 years. So not being the lead, and you don't always have to be the lead institution. So I took the position of there's another school that takes the lead, and you do the same kinds of initiatives in multi-institutions. So it's not always about, oh, we need to get advanced. And it's like, well, no, if you partner with an institution with the same interests, the same goals, okay, you can have the same kind of impact. And trust me, NSF likes that. They like that very much so. So let me talk about my Catalyst Award, and I need to preface this. So when we applied for this grant, we had a president that was doing pretty well. And for whatever reason, the year that we applied, he stepped down. And then we got an interim president. And so when we got the interim president, guess what? I get the IT award. Yay! Well, no, okay? Because the president was, the interim president came with some objectives and, and it was a cost-cutting time, I'll just say that, right? So imagine the attitudes of the faculty, oh my goodness. But with my grant, I still got 2 years to get the work done, right? I couldn't wait and do the climate survey when she's gone. I had to do it at that time. So unfortunate for me, I still had to do a climate survey during that tumultuous time. So I say that in context in terms of what our objective was. We still have pretty much the same population, but the attitudes in the faculty have somewhat changed. So I say that again in the context of a period of leadership transition is what I call it, whereby our goal is to conduct a self-assessment of faculty concerns and career challenges of STEM. So myself, Dr. Thompson, who's now a president, and Dr. Emerson, we were fortunate enough to receive this award and did the climate survey. So as you saw earlier, there are about 400 faculty, probably a little more than that. And so we had a good response, relative good response. 433 faculty took the survey, and 118 PhDs, 21 EDDs. And here's the distribution of the faculty in terms of the areas. And so, and it makes sense in the social sciences and humanities and health sciences with the largest replies. I was talking earlier at a table, said that there always be a cohort of faculty that believes that their response to a survey has no value or no meaning. And so how do you convince them to do that? Well, I can assure you during this time of transition, it was very difficult to get responses. And then the ones that we did get, I'm not sure I wanted them, right? Because they wanted to respond just to respond in a negative fashion. But, as they say, it is what it is. So this is a distribution of their responses. And, if I can also tell you what the composition, demographic of the faculty as well. But, and this is important, and I'm not sure how relevant this is at MTSU, but in terms of citizenship, we have a lot, I've seen a lot, but we do have faculty that, permanent residents and what have you. Highest degree, variation from EDDs and PhDs. And I don't know, I don't know if you guys ever did this survey, but what percentage of your faculty are alums? Is there a number for that?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have a clue.
You may not think that's important, but it really is. Because there's an allegiance. You would think so, right? There's an allegiance for alums. I mean, I've discovered that, they're the ones who really do what's necessary. And I don't say that just because I'm an alum, okay? But I'm just very fortunate and blessed to come back and have that role. So we did the focus groups and the survey, and you guys know that kind of thing. But we also want to look specifically at when it comes to communication. And I highlighted in red the kinds of things that kind of stepped out there, but communication between, when it comes to males and females, there is this, and I'm glad I prefaced that about the electrical engineering department, this climate of collegiality don't always work. Or, well, I shouldn't say work, does not exist. And then there are faculty that don't want it to exist, okay? Now, whether it's cultural or just desire or what have you, that has been and is a problem. And I don't think that's just because of the composition of TSU or MTSU or Georgia Tech or University of Michigan. I think it's pretty clear across. For example, contentious. In our focus group, we had, I recall a couple of women had some issues with the dean, not me, another dean, right? That she could not get travel support. And that dean was demanding that she justify that going to this conference is worthy of providing the support. Not the great dean that you guys have, okay? You guys make that request, okay? There also an issue of collaboration was an issue, and then, and I mentioned about the institutional leaders, there's a large group felt like there was no transparency in what the new interim president was doing. Well, that's debatable. Also here, I looked at the racial distribution, and let me just say that it doesn't matter what the demographic or racial composition your institution is. There are white professors at TSU can have the same feelings of isolation as an African American professor at Michigan, MTSU, same kind of situation. I acknowledge that. And so the question is, for both type of environments, how do you deal with that to make sure both of them have an opportunity to succeed? Okay? Irrespective of racial background or what have you. And so the items I have listed here, this 43%, and I'll be honest with you, that came out of the social sciences and some of the challenges there with that dean. So do I feel secure in my current position next 3 years? We can talk about that. Are you satisfied in general with your current job? Somewhat. I think for, and this is interesting here, right? Females somewhat to very satisfied, more than the males. African American and white, located here. Funding, yes. And I'm a big grant guy, College of Engineering. And so how satisfied are you with the level of university funding for your research efforts? This was the kicker for us, okay? This was the kicker. In other words, do everybody have access to funding? And this population felt like they were not. And so we have taken action to address that. Again, it's not about race, it's about, is there a sector of your population that feels that they don't have the opportunities? And that's the goal. Sense of being valued, so let me just show these last two. Best aspects about working at TSU, and I like this, diversity. They like the diversity, geographic location as well. Very positive there. Again, diversity by race. But we also ask, it's always a look in, what are some of the challenges of worse, and I guess compensation always comes up, right? And I think this really is a staff issue, but teaching load and, that came down, and lack of shared governance, that also showed up as well. So the earlier talk about the panel on mentoring, I can't express more important than that. But I want to show the difference between, if there is a difference between STEM and the non-STEM faculty. Is anyone whom you currently regard as a mentor, someone who gives advice or what have you? And so for non-STEM faculty, about 60%. For STEM faculty, about, less than 50%. And one of the challenges for me is there are two colleges with all the STEM majors. There's now a College of Life and Physical Sciences, and then there's a College of Engineering, okay? And the challenge is for the cohorts in both of those departments, how do we meet their funding or access to funding needs and the tenure and promotion process. And I acknowledge that there has been, and I can only reflect on my last 7 years, there's a tremendous bias in the tenure and promotion process. I don't care what you change in the policies in terms of the text, the composition of the committee has a lot more to do with that than anything, and the dean or chair, and then obviously the vice president of academic affairs are making that decision. So some of the observations from our catalyst: need for more collaboration, and this is important, to fill in the isolation of minority faculty, and at our institutions that could be considered as non-black. Access to funding, mentoring needed, and funding distribution of faculty. So how we have responded, and I mentioned to you that we're collaborating with another institution, Jackson State, and in terms of our current efforts. On the outside here are what some of the issues were, and then on the inside here is how we have responded. Now, we don't have a Women of STEM Center, okay? The way we have addressed this is through our Office of Sponsored Research and Programs. What I'm saying to you, the way we have addressed tenure and promotion and access to funding is through our research office, not a particular office for diversity and inclusion, what have you. Because we've discovered that's where the challenges is, How can this female faculty stop getting assigned to all these service activities when she should be working, have release time to write some grants? And that's what has been happening in certain sectors or certain departments, where, and I've been guilty of it as well, with a junior faculty, and I admit this, assigning her to help with students. Now, she agreed to do that, but at the same time, after the first semester, I said, well, okay, that's great, Dr. So-and-so, and you did a great job for that, but let's transition, okay? And here's some release time, that here are some opportunities for grants, and you need to spend time writing proposals for this area. Don't fall in that trap of doing these service-related activities, what I call TVAs. I said, you should only be focused on doing TVAs, which are tenured valued activities, period, okay? And depending on institution, you have to make that decision. So we responded by creating what are called research clusters. With the approval of the president, we have an administrative council and a dean's council. We've developed a series of faculty development seminars and put together a document for every junior faculty or tenure faculty to construct their own career management plan, okay? And have metrics assigned to each of those items as well. And so that is how we are responding. So our institutional response, and the good thing here is that in 2013, our new president, hooray, then we also hired a new AVP of Research and Sponsored Programs, and that Dr. Lisa Crumpton-Young, who's championed this effort. And we've done these regular scheduled workshops and seminars as well. And I mentioned about our relationship with PAID. So if you don't know what PAID is, and that's all about dissemination of best practices. And so for the last 3 summers, I have identified a minimum of 5 female faculty that whether you like it or not, you are going to this summer retreat. And they have, and one of those retreats was in the islands, okay? So you go on this retreat, and right, and NSF paid for it, right? Yeah, I have a volunteer back here, okay? And just an incredible experience as well. And so after these last 3 summers, well, I have to admit, 2 of them went more than once. But out of these, I think 13 or 14 female faculty, all of them have resulted in at least 1 funded grant. Now, whether that's an NSF or a Department of Homeland Security or Boeing, so an industry contract instead of grant, okay? And we can talk about that as well. And so that has been very productive for this faculty as part of it. Again, I said, we've submitted the big IT grant, but our strategy was to collaborate with another institution and do the same advanced initiatives, which I think was a pretty good strategy. And so what does our proposal look like? It's about productivity. Judith had mentioned about the NSF Advanced Toolkit, which is an excellent document because it lays out all the metrics. And so that was in our proposal. And again, and I say this, there's a tendency that channeling women faculty to a lot of service-oriented or student-oriented tasks. We, as in deans, chairs, need to be more conscious about doing that, okay? Now, if there's their choice post-tenure, that's a different issue. But that definitely has to be changed. So incentives, the good thing about an NSF Advance is that you can put together packages, as was talked about earlier, to even hire somebody before they get there, okay? You can do that. And if you think you can't, just call the project director and say, hey, I have this fantastic person, okay? She is this and this, and underrepresented group, or her research is in this emerging field that the institution is really trying to, kick off. You can negotiate with NSF and justify using funds to do something like that, okay? Now that's not in the solicitation, but you can do that. And of course, these review, and I think we're there in terms of the tenure and promotion. From my perspective, I think the issue still is who's on the committee, okay? And what they bring to the committee in terms of their own issues. So, overall, women represent, I think it's a little less than that, 17% of STEM faculty. Women of color, less than 6%. I think the NSF Advance is the right program. Going to NSF quite often, their funding has been challenged, but they have maintained funding over the last few years. Actually, they had maybe even a little small increase. And so we have a $3.1 million pending proposal with NSF that I'm pretty sure we're going to get. And if we don't, I'd be really surprised, just because of the track record, what we know, and what we put in there. And if we don't, you know, we just wipe it off and continue to say, okay, well, we didn't get that grant, but how can we still be committed and do the same things? And you do that by collaboration, okay? You do that by collaboration. And so you just find another avenue if you're committed to again, what I propose, this D&I effort to do that. So I do commend MTSU, and thanks, Judith, for the invitation, and your STEM Center. I think you are definitely on the right track and serving as on the advisory board. And Judith and I talk. Anything that I can do to help, I have no problems with supporting you. So on that note, I'll take a couple questions. Well, I have one. How do I deal with a department that's not making any strides to recruit, promote, and advance women in an academic unit? Advice. Yes.
I love what you said about collaboration. I think that is key to everything. And that started with the National Girls Collaborative Project that we're part of, and that's expanding through our Women in STEM Centers. Just, you know, get that department to collaborate with another department, chair and faculty, and maybe see what they're doing. Because as you said, collaboration is key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me tell you two strategies that I've done. I'm not sure if it's working, but so the department chair, so let me go back. The university has had a series of diversity workshops, those kinds of things, and those are great. So I made sure that he attends. He and I said all this faculty should go, right? Well, I said all faculty in the college should go. You don't want to point anyone out, right? But I strategically made sure that most of his faculty go to these kind of sessions. And so he softened up a little bit, okay? So that's one. And then two, I said, Dr. So-and-so, do you think your department reflects the composition of the students you serve? And then I just stepped back, okay? And his response was, probably not now, but we're working toward it. So now I got him. Okay, so now I can make it a performance metric, okay? I baited him in, okay? And now I can make a performance metric. And so what I did last year, I said, you know, let's work together on how we can change that by recruitment. And I'll help you find some funds to attract some well-qualified faculty. That's what I said, well-qualified faculty. But he knew I was talking about women faculty, because he's the only department, notice what I said, he's the only department with no women faculty in, okay? None, okay? And electrical engineer, I probably called him out, right? I mean, one of the largest disciplines, right? So now I've captured in part of a performance metric. So I'm working with him and his department. And that's a good thing, okay? That's what I think a good chair and hopefully a good dean should be doing, right? Yes.
Is it that the women are not passing the interview process, like they're not either considering them, or they're not coming to the table, or once they get in the system, they're not getting a fair shot at promotion? Which is the biggest problem you see?
So I'm hesitant to responding with the camera going, but I'll say three things. I'll say three things. One, no effort to recruit. Two, the 6 or 7 that went through were not mentored, were channeled to service activities, and when it came down to the tenure promotion, they did not get it. And so what one of them did is after the 4th year said that, I've had it, I'm moving over to computer science, doing fantastic over in computer science, okay? Don't go look this up, guys. Okay, but she's doing great in computer science with electrical engineering background and doing well. So again, not recruiting, the mentoring in terms of the matriculation. And so all 7 that were there left, okay? And I think all 7 of them were more than qualified to do well. And I don't mean to, I hope I'm not criticizing or pointing out. It's just that 7 didn't work. Goodness gracious, that's.
Well, and now you're fighting against that history. Because any woman that interviews is going to say, why are there no women in this department, and what's happened to women in the past?
Give that man a blue ribbon. That's exactly right. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And so it's funny you said that, because last year I had met a PhD student who was about to graduate, and I was talking to her, and I had to really give some serious thought that I want to put her through that, and she took something else, but you're right, yes.
I'm curious, did you do exit interviews with the women? Because I'm thinking if there was a pattern of something going on, the women would report that, and then you could turn around and share it with the department and say, this is what the women are saying. What do you think?
That's a brilliant suggestion. So I only had an opportunity to do one of them. The other 6 were before I got there. Okay. No, I'm sorry, I did 2. So one of them, who's in computer science, I talked to her, okay, and I actually mentor her. I actually mentor 6 women as we speak right now. So her, and then the other faculty member, who's at Rose Holman, don't look it up, okay, and I talked to her about it as well. And so, I know what the issues are that I won't say on camera, and it's a cultural thing. And I mean, if faculty are saying, why are you an engineer? That's a cultural thing, right? And so yes, good point.
Yeah, I was thinking about an institution that I know that has that in a chemistry department. And that institution has the toxic environment. The word is out there. No woman in chemistry is going to apply to that department, because it's a very similar kind of scenario where it's been over years. Hasn't been a lot of change in the faculty in that department. And I'm trying to keep it general. But the reputation is there, and no woman will apply there. And I've actually heard about this department because I have a lot of connections in engineering too. And part of the fact is the word is out. Now, in this other institution, the only intervention is the president and the provost and the dean agreed to withhold resources from that department until they started screaming, and I think they got to 3 or 4 FTEs down. And it was heavy, but it was a very intense, concerted effort because of the details that you would know, but you can't talk about publicly. And they withheld it and found a few champions in that department who wanted to help them change. And they had 4 FTEs and said, you can get the 4 FTEs now that you need people if 3 of them are women. You only get to hire 1 white guy. but the pain was awful because it was a very dire intervention because the toxic environment was so pervasive, women wouldn't even apply.
Absolutely.
I mean, these are, I wish I had an easy answer. These are terrible situations. And if you have some champions that are on the faculty that know this ain't right, this is not right, that our department is this way, maybe there are ways you can begin to build with them and get to a better place.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, those are terrible.
Everything stays in here. Yes, sir. Saeed.
Those 7 faculty, they had PhD in electrical engineering?
Yes.
Okay. Have you guys looked at bring a well-qualified faculty that has like 8, 9 years of experience and hire them as a 10-year faculty in that department?
That's a very good strategy, and I'm going to have that opportunity. I can only speak to the 2 that happened during my time, versus a fresh out of college. However, back to the other comment, there is still the recruitment and selection process. So there could be a way, and I'm probably revealing way too much, right? But in the selection of a, right? Okay. Even the selection of a tenure track, that could be stopped there too, right? So yes, I agree with you. And then, I get a pushback, no, we don't want a seasoned, we want a junior faculty. Okay? No, we don't want a junior faculty, we want a seasoned faculty. So it's back and forth.
If you want to make the life very hard for yourself, but in the long run,
It's already hard. Don't you feel my pain here?
hire a female chair, well experienced for that department, and it will destroy you, but it will get better.
Is that? Thanks for that consultation, right? Okay, I think you had last one.
It's a little bit of a diversion, but I was interested in your slides about communication and the social dynamics, because so often in any professional context, women are advised, to be assertive with your point of view, don't necessarily qualify your statements, and a lot things along those lines. But at the same time, you get a lot of messages that make you question, as a woman, what your point of view is. Just recently, it came to mind for me because we had a candidate for a job, and several of us sat in on the presentation for the candidate. Myself and another woman asked really pertinent questions because we were knowledgeable about their area, and he sort of didn't answer them sort of well, not really that well, but a man gave him a total softball question. He said, "That's a really good question," and he really validated that person's, statement. But myself and the other woman, kind of deflected it, didn't really validate, other concerns that we had about that area. And I didn't really notice, but my colleague noticed it, so later she pointed it out to me. And, that's just, for me, just a recently brought to my awareness some of those messages that we get as women about questioning our point of view, whereas sometimes, I know this is a very overgeneralization, but then at the same time,
Yeah, but
they
it's
get
right on the money.
validated. So I'm just curious what you would advise, what you found, and what your surveys have found about those cultural, social communication aspects of the professional world that we live in.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. And so I have to say I see that, I witnessed that for comments from junior faculty, well, towards junior faculty. But here's the thing that troubles me with that. I'm sitting in meetings, and there are junior faculty there, and we'll go through the meeting, and they won't say anything. So after the meeting, I said, why did you say anything? Well, I don't think as a junior faculty, I have any value or position to say at that point. And my response was, that's exactly why you should be talking, okay? Because all those old fuddy-duddies there have been there 25 years, and it's all status quo. And so I'm encouraging you as your dean, and I will protect you behind the scenes, to make statements about change and about issues that are relevant. So I think you are right, but I will say, and I'll end on this comment, the common denominator really is an advocate that does mentoring, an advocate on the search committee, an advocate in administration, chair, dean. It really is an individual who's committed to make those changes. And so how we as an institution, higher education, do that and do more of that, it is happening, and a lot of institutions have made some significant progress, but there's still some ways to go. Okay, thank you very much.